देश है। विश्व में हमने युवाओं की आईटी एनर्जी के माध्यम से अपना एक रुतबा खड़ा किया है और भारत इसके बाद के लिए गर्व कर सकता है। दुनिया में हम आंख में आंख मिला करके बात कर सकते हैं। और ये मेरा साफ मैं हमेशा कहता आया हूं, आईटी प्लस आईटी इज इक्वल टू आईटी। इंफॉर्मेशन टेक्नोलॉजी प्लस इंडियन टैलेंट इज इक्वल टू इंडिया टुमारो।
Hello and good morning, everyone, and welcome you all to ELIT's 5th BFSI Leadership Summit, organized by ELIT Technomedia, Knowledge Partner, the Banking and Finance Coach, powered by Precision Group. Today, we have in the summit the top tech leaders from the BFSI industry who will share their innovations and their outlook for the BFSI industry. Moving on to the welcome address, I would now like to invite Dr. Ravi Gupta, CEO and founder of ELIT Technomedia and editor-in-chief of the Banking and Finance. Dr. Ravi Gupta, over to you, sir.
Namaskar. I am Ravi Gupta. I am CEO and founder of ELIT Technomedia Private Limited, and I welcome you all to the 5th edition of the annual BFSI Leadership Summit. As you are all aware that ELIT has been publishing this magazine called BFSI Post for last 7 years. And we have been also publishing a magazine called eGov, which is on e-governance, digital learning, which is about IT in education, and another magazine called eHealth, which is about IT in health. And today, we are excited to bring a host of speakers, host of leaders in the BFSI industry, who will be deliberating about the future of the BFSI industry and the innovations which are happening. What are the changes which have happened after the COVID scenario, and how is the industry gearing up for larger wide-scale adoption of newer and newer IT innovations in this BFSI ecosystem. So requesting you all to be logged in this one-day conference, and we are streaming it live on our platform Avatar, which is a 3D virtual platform. And I welcome all the delegates from the BFSI industry who have joined in this annual event of ELITs. So let me start with welcoming our speakers. We are joined in by Shri Shankar Jadhav, who is the Managing Director of BSE Investment and Head Strategy, BSE Limited. Welcome, Shankar ji. Thanks for joining us, and namaste to you. Namaskar, Shankar Jadhav ji.
Namaskar.
And namaskar, Shankar ji. I think your audio is breaking a bit, Shankar ji. If you can, are you connected by Bluetooth? Like, if you can remove it, it will be easier. So just remove each ear plugs, and we can reduce the noise. And let me welcome Vijay Kumar ji, who is a CEO and Principal Officer of Go Digit General Insurance. Namaskar, Vijay Kumar ji. Thanks for joining us. Requesting Shankar Jadhav ji to kindly remove your earphone and that can reduce the noise. You can directly speak in the
Sound on.
Shankar Jadhav ji, please remove this earphone and speak directly in this your laptop, and it can reduce the noise.
Dude, my voice is clear.
We, Shankar Jadhav ji, am I audible to you?
Yes, I
But we can't hear you. Like your noise has your ear.
Voice is
this
fumbling,
is
sir.
lots of noise.
Please remove.
One mic is on. I'm not using. I can hear you clearly, Ravi.
Uh, uh,
It is
yeah,
not my mic, it is.
sir, you can hear us, but we can't hear you actually. Like if you can remove earphone, I think. Sorry for this interruption, and I apologize for all these technical issues here. Sorry for
Our
this.
tech team
And
is, sir, our tech team people are checking the issue and they'll get them back soon on the screen.
yes, yes. So let me start with the first session, and I will like request Vijay Kumar ji to speak and start the session. And the session name is Economic Recovery Post COVID. Search for a right alphabet. And here we are going to talk about like what are the changes which have emerged after the COVID situation has arrived in the BFSI industry. So I will request Shri Vijay Kumar ji, who is the CEO and Principal Officer of Go Digit General Insurance, to kindly deliver your views on this subject. Vijay ji, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Raviji, for this opportunity. And I think post COVID, after tremendous challenges that the economy faced and the country and the world overall faced because of these COVID issues. I think the recovery, as far as India is concerned, is much better the way it looks like. And yesterday's forecast from IMF actually clearly also give confidence that the growth, GDP growth expected is going to be around 11.5% in 21-22. As of now, if you look at it, I think all the parameters are looking good. GST, I think collection is up as expected, or maybe more than what probably people have expected. Fuel consumption is also coming back to the normal, and automotive growth is a very very positive. I think already in double digit it is consistently for last 3-4 months is consistently at the rate of in the double digit. So overall I think is looking good. And as far as the non-life industry, insurance industry is concerned, where I come from, the industry is on the recovery path. Even though overall as an industry, I think there is a slight growth of 1 to 2%. But some of the companies, including us, I think have grown very well. We are as a company, Go Digit is growing at the rate of 30% consistently, in this year, YTD if you look at. So I think all the parameters are looking good. Now all depend on how the manufacturing sector and the service sector and agriculture sector will behave. So as of now, I think things are looking good, and the way we are expecting the budget, I think there's a lot of expectations, and wherever the gaps are left out, certain sectors there is a setback. For example, tourism, hotel industry, airline industry, I think there was a immense setback where we hope that the finance minister will look at various ways and means to revive this industry.
Thank you, Vijayji. Very positive remarks you have given about the economy. And let me request our next speaker, Shri Shankar Jadavji, who is the MD of BSE Investments, to kindly talk about how he sees that the COVID recovery, how it is happening and how it is going to impact the overall BFSI sector as a whole. Shankarji, over to you.
Am I audible, Mr. Ravi?
Yes, you are audible. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
First of all, thank you, Ravi and Vijay, for starting the whole thing. And I'm sorry that something happened to the microphone or whatever. Let me tell you, the Indian economy has really recovered very well. The indicators show very good things. I believe that the Indian economy will be one of the fastest growing economies post-COVID because of the lower effects that we have seen in India as compared to the Western economies. Also, our financial sector is quite deep and broad. We've been doing very well in finance, which is the lifeblood of any economy, for past many decades. With such a mature system, I don't see much of a problem in the financial side of it or the systemic side of it. But let me point out a few problems that are hurdles that India might face. One of the things is we have been very capital starved economy. And when you get a break in capital formation in a year or two, you will see lots of employment issues in the near future. Because of the stop in the economic activities, we are likely to see a K-shaped recovery. World over, when people are studying, we've seen in the past also the newer economic issues normally lead to a K-shaped recovery because the people who are richer or people who have healthy balances of wealth, they can continue to live as they are and might reduce their consumption or activities by a small amount. But the poorer people who normally dip into the savings at this time, you can see it to the EPFO withdrawals that we have seen people taking out. And even studies independently done, like for instance, Azim Premji University yesterday had published some report about what's happened to the people who are saving or working. I believe that what we are seeing is a profit-led recovery just now, due to which the share markets also going up. Of course, there's also enough liquidity. But the consumer-led recovery, that is the savings-led recovery, is still a far away, which is what India depended on. If you see the savings ratio in India, it's come down drastically in the last decade or so, where people are not able to fight inflation. In fact, I'm surprised by the fact that we are increasing the inflation expectation rates, but we are not ready to increase the interest rates of the RBI because we want liquidity and we want capital formation to take place. This might lead to a problem later on, in my opinion. We have to match those because the people who are savers, if they don't get adequate return on their savings, they would be profligate, and then we will have people who don't have any parachute to rely on once they lose their jobs, and it will create lots of issues. Similarly, MSME sector. We've been talking to lots of MSMEs. They have done very well in the initial part of the coronavirus because all of them thought it's a very small step in between. We will lock down for a certain time and get out. Unfortunately, the government has been quite slow in getting the economy to the full growth, and rightly so because they are more worried about COVID-related complications and deaths and health issues. But that is going to be a main problem. We have to open up our economy, especially for the lower sector, the MSME sector, and also the people in the lower strata. And I think the budget will express these issues very clearly.
Sure. Shankarji, thanks for highlighting both the positive the sides of the India growth projections and the challenges we have for the MSME sector especially. Let me talk about another point which the IMF has highlighted, that in spite of the overall higher growth projections for India for the next year, more than 11%. IMF has highlighted that the rural sector and the poorer sectors of the economy and the informal sector will be having a lot of challenges. So, requesting Vijay Kumarji to give your opinion on that. How do you see that sector of the economy, how recovery will happen, and how will it impact the BFSI sector as a whole? Vijayji.
If you go back to the entire tenure of this particular government, lot of things they have done to correct the basics, whether it is with regard to the NPAs of the banks or maybe the insurance industry or other sectors, or maybe enabling reach to the rural people, or maybe the people in the remote areas of the country, to banking and other benefits, opening of the bank accounts for all the citizens of India, plus direct transfer of money, and then ease of transacting payments. I think a lot of these enablers have been provided by this government, which I think will go a long way in expanding into the rural market. I agree with you that rural market always has been a challenge, and that is where I think the low-hanging fruits are there, and now internet availability and the banking facilities available in the rural areas, I think transacting business for any sector, I think, becomes much easier. So this is how I think insurance sector also, I think a lot of penetration actually will happen in the rural sector only, and now more and more companies are going digital. COVID has really proven that the insurance industry can live up to this expectation of delivering contactless services. So I don't see any challenge actually going to the rural sector on the rural side and transacting business for any for non-life companies particularly, and if it is possible for the insurance industry to penetrate in rural sector, I don't see any reason why it should not happen for other sectors as well. So I see a lot of potential there, and this is where I think the next wave of growth actually, what IMF is talking, I think to my mind will happen in that sector. Second, this COVID has also taught companies to, for example, utilize the resources available in the remote areas, work from home. I think today, if you see tier 3 cities, a lot of companies have employed people in tier 3 cities, and from where the entire business is, the employees are working from their home, native place. So, which is also a great step, and this will also help build a lot of employment in the rural sector and tier three sector, tier three cities of India, and which will ultimately help boost the economy. Another one more, I think, impetus that we can talk about is the recent development, which has happened vis-a-vis China, where I feel that as a result of that, I think this government has embarked upon a program to promote Make in India, and this Make in India, I think, will be one of the major, fueling factor for this growth. If you look at last Diwali, I think where a lot of small items used in Diwali were normally imported from China. The government relied on Indian manufacturers, and good number of imports were saved, and localization actually was promoted. Similarly, in the COVID period also, you see the Prime Minister always talk about PPE kits, etc. These equipment which are simple in nature and can be easily manufactured in India. Earlier were being imported. I think so. These are the factors which are really going to help India. And what IMF has given the forecast, I think, is not a dream. It is very much achievable, I guess.
Sure. So, Vijayji, thanks for highlighting these positive points about the economy, the talk about Make in India, the PPEs, the looking at the NPH and other important reforms which have happened. So let me request Shankar Jadavji and ask him that in last 5 years, there has been a gradual slow in the economic growth of the country, and there are before the COVID also there were a lot of economic stress which was being seen in the economy, and suddenly we are seeing a V-shaped recovery, and IMF talking about double-digit growth next year. So, what's the miracle that India is going through? That how suddenly economy which was slowing down and suddenly it hit the bottom in COVID will actually grow like a phoenix. So, what are the fundamental strengths of the Indian economic system which will take this growth forward? Shankarji. You are on mute, Shankarji.
Sorry, Raviji, you have pointed out very good aspects of what is happening. And thanks to Vijay also. Vijay is a very optimist person, and I'm very glad that we have optimist people in India. Actually, India has rebound because lots of people in India, they believe in, small things, bad things will pass off very quickly, and we can come to the good things again. Unfortunately, it also has a double effect. Everything that you think has a double effect. What happens is, if you don't feel that you are in pain or you have some symptoms of illness, you will not take a medicine. And I believe that is what is the problem that has been there last few years, as you pointed out. The people in authority have stopped looking at the economy with as much priority as they should, and have put the attention in other important parts. I am not saying the other parts are not important. They are important. But when you have to survive, you have to first look at food and not look at whether you are taking bath or not. So in my opinion, the Indian economy has been sputtering around, or rather we have been growing, but not to the full extent that we should, because we have not been laying emphasis on economics. That's first. Second, even though we may lay emphasis on economics, you have to have healthy discussions. And unfortunately, over the last few years, we have not had healthy discussions on both sides of the viewpoints. We've always seen many people, especially in authority and responsible positions, they do not want to upset the apple cart. They don't want to move the balance. They don't want to tilt towards this side or this side. and not want to be seen away from something. I think that is the worst thing. When I talk to my children, and especially when I talk to my students who I teach, I tell them, if you give me positive feedback, it really doesn't matter me much, except it gives me a boost. Yes, I am doing something correct. But if you give me critical feedback, where I am wrong, where I can improve, I think that will help me in my life and career and as a person. Similarly, for a country, I am sure that IMF has really done well to praise our work and effort, but they have to do something more. They have not pointed out how we should do. And you should not forget that IMF has Indians at the top now. So just taking IMF's name doesn't matter, because it is a normal practice that if it's my son, I will always praise him, and if it's someone else's son, I may not praise him as much. So what we have to look at is a pinch of salt. What you're saying is correct. First, if we don't acknowledge there is a problem, I'm sure we are not going to take a medicine for it. You are saying recovery. Let me tell you, in real terms, we are not going to grow. The inflation is high. You can see the fuel prices. Unfortunately, the government can't do much because they also don't have money. The issue is how much fiscal deficit can we accept? How much can we borrow from the future to fund our programs now? And we also have to think, should we talk about things which are not really important right now? I believe we are not really looking at it. We should talk about unemployment. We should talk about capital formation. We should talk about how we can take all people together. Let me tell you, the last time we had the crisis, in say Lehman Brothers crisis, 2007 and 8, our economy survived mainly because we were largely informal at the lower levels. As we try to formalize the economy, as Vijay also mentioned, and the government is really trying to do, getting people into the main line, when we formalize, the effects go to everyone at the same level or rather faster. It's like saying, you increase the speed of the car because you want to reach somewhere faster. If you don't have brakes, or you can have disastrous effects also faster. Most of the Indian economy, especially at lower strata, is an informal economy. In fact, people have been asking me, okay, everyone talks about financial inclusion and they want us to do banking and all. Why do they want to do banking? When I have no money with me, why should I go to the bank? Suppose I have 1,000 rupees or few thousand rupees. If I have it in my pocket, yes, there is a risk of loss, etc. But someone has to hurt me first. But I can use it anytime. Raat ko 12 baje also I can make payments. Whereas if it's a banking system, then I have to learn the English language and the mobiles, and I have to have a working connection. For people like me, we don't have a proper working connections in Bombay. You can see the Ookla report recently that Indian network is so bad. If we don't fix the infrastructure, if the government wants to put high prices for the spectrum and expects people to have low prices, it's not going to happen. And the people in the telecom sector try to complain that the prices of Indian data connectivity is the lowest. It is lowest not because they want to keep it low. It is lowest because the demand-supply gap is there. If they increase the prices, the people don't want to consume it. Of course, data is like a nasha. It's an addiction. So once you start using YouTube or Facebook or something, people want to go on using it. But when you have such a scenario where you don't have money for eating food, I don't think people are going to pay for telecom infrastructure. And similarly for banking, I have tried to open some small bank. My son doesn't work right now. So I said, okay, I want to make a basic bank account. And the banks are refusing. They're saying, we don't want you to have a general normal Jan Dhan account. We want you to go up. You please submit more proof, have adequate balance and all. I think because it's not worthwhile, the banks cannot really service such accounts. So one side you are telling the banks to do all this social work and not pay them. Second side, even the electronic payments, the government has issued guidelines saying the MDR should be waived off for certain time, and even for BHIM UPI payments. If there is no money in the system for people who provide services, I don't think it's going to work. People are ready to pay enough adequate prices or adequate charges for them. The charges have to be moderated, especially initially. And when you want poor people to do it, we require all those things. Unfortunately, that's not happening. But the sectors, like for instance, share markets and all, the broker charges have gone down drastically because of the demand supply. And we've seen the number of investors increase. Like for instance, BSE has a huge increase in number in the investors during the COVID period. People who have money don't have avenues to invest the money. So what has happened is people have come to financial markets, people have invested in gold because real estate is not doing well. So those who have money have no avenues. because there's no productive capital investment opportunities. Fortunately, we are seeing listings happening. We are also seeing corporate debts getting listed or coming up. I believe the government is working in the right direction, but they have to think more, give more priority. The companies and the organizations are interested in looking out for new pastures, but unless they get a good risk return avenues, they will not invest. So, capital formation is the big key that we have to look at in this budget.
Sure.
Thank you.
Excellent inputs, Shankarji, and I think you have highlighted the point that unless we recognize the endless, we can't solve it. We will not be interested to solve it and have the pay. So let me come at the next point in the discussion, which is about going digital. And I think Vijayji touched about it in his speech in the last round. And after the COVID situation emerged, all offices were forced to work from home, and that I think impacted a lot of sectors. And sometimes COVID is called the new CTO of any organization, the chief technology of any organization, because of COVID. A lot of IT implementation happened in several sectors. So let me request Vijay Raji to talk about that impact of digital in the insurance sector and how it has changed the insurance industry as a whole, both from a seller's angle and the buyer's angle. Vijay Ji, over to you.
Yeah, so as far as the non-life insurance industry is concerned, I think situation was not all that bad even prior to COVID. Okay, especially the new companies and the middle-aged companies actually were already quite geared up, on the digitalization front. But COVID ultimately actually proved to be the test, and they proved real capability on the ground for the insurance sector. Work from home, contactless delivery of policies, contactless delivery of claim services, I think are now common in non-life industry now. If I give you some examples here, today there is the industry has attained a capability where the motor claim can be, the amount can be credited to the customer's account within 30 minutes, without, there is no need of survey, there is no need of estimates, there is no need of claim form. So to that extent, the industry is already geared up. There is a product that we have launched, travel delay, where the integration has been done with the airlines, and in split seconds, whenever the delay, flight delay happens, automatically the message goes to the customer, and customer then is told to submit certain documents through that SMS link, and claim is settled. So customer even doesn't know that the claim has happened. Insurance company remind that claim happened. Please do this, and then automatically settled. So totally contactless transaction is already happening. Of course, there is a long way to go, and there are a lot of challenges also. The few of the challenges I would like to talk about is, which Shankarji also has highlighted. I think one of, because the connectivity issues, the internet bandwidth, I think maybe because the utilization has increased suddenly, but whether the telecom companies are really coping up with that load, I think is a question mark. We have seen just now, at the start of our discussion, I think there were some issues with regard to internet. So these are, I think, also becoming common problems every day. And second, I think it is good that corporates are, are able to reap a lot of benefit by making employees working from home. But then there are some social, challenges, social challenges also there. Whether person how long can continue to work from home and all 24 hours working in same environments and thinking about office only. I think what are the after effects it is going to have on the health of the employees, on the psyche of the employees, on the social their relationship with their relatives and uh, uh, nears and dears and close relatives. So these are the challenges which we are going to face going forward. These things looks good as of now, but these will have different kind of challenges and dimensions as we go forward. Um, Third, I think another good thing I would say that which government is doing very good thing is providing a lot of enablers to the all the sectors, and I'm talking about particularly financial and insurance sectors. Some of the information that they are collating and pooling in, and then providing to the customer, to the industry, so that the transparency is better. Everybody knows who is who. For example, for insurance, I think a lot of things have been done where the insurance data is being compiled by at the regulator front. Insurance Information Bureau is there. All vehicle details are available now on the Vahan. FASTag, I think, is another revolutionary step the government has taken. I think one of extremely appreciable step that I can talk about is National Health Authority has just now embarked upon a program where they are going to collate the information of all the patients, hospitals, doctors, insurance industry on one platform, and with the permission of the with the stakeholder, I think then they can exchange that information, and so these things are ultimately going to help in digitalizations. Digitalization is incomplete if these enablers are not available. So Jan Dhan accounts, where the monies can be transferred instantly, or maybe banking expanding to rural areas. I think these are the few things which are going to be very helpful and for the digitalization. The other good thing is the regulators are also gearing up. Unfortunately, I can say, and this is a bit of concern, that while the corporate sector actually has been trying to fly, the regulators who are controlling these business, they are not moving at that speed. And slowly, thanks to the development that has happened during the COVID, I think they have also geared up, and now I think the outlook is different than it used to be maybe 5 years back, 3 years back. So, so digitalization overall, I would say that particularly for my sector, insurance sector, I think situation is quite encouraging and changed. And of course, there's a long way to go. Still, small improvements are required at a ground level. But overall, there is a positive move, and things are looking good.
Sure. Vijayji, again, thanks for the highly optimistic note, and you highlighted the various positives of the whole digital implementation which is happening across the ecosystem. Let me request Shankar Jadhav ji to talk about how you are seeing the impact of digitalization of the economy across the sectors, and like inside your organization and across other sectors of the economy. Has it brought more economic efficiency, efficiency of money, efficiency of ROI, like all that? Is it improving the bottom lines? Is it good for the economy? Your views about it, Shankar.
In fact, I was part of the first digital revolution that we had when we started up the mobile sector in 2000. I know people used to laugh at what I used to say, that you will have phones which will have video conferencing and you can have caller tunes separately for your family and friends and others, etc., etc. In fact, I am very keen on the IT side because I started my life in that and I have been working through that. Let me tell you, network, the Indian network, the mobile network, as well as the internet network is very robust, very well done. Unfortunately, the capital investment that should go into it is not going into it for last few years, or even when we started well, but we have not been, and we have some failures also in that sector. Some companies have gone out and some consolidation occurred. The digitalization of this country, as Vijay rightly pointed out, COVID has become the CTO rather than people trying to take over, because the moment you digitalize everything, then you yourself become irrelevant. You know, if I am the IT person and I make it automatic, then what am I required for? That is the worry that many people have. It's like the doctors feel that if you have websites telling people what to do and how to do when they are ill, they are worried. But I don't think the IT people, the human being, will be taken out from them. So far as regulations of capital markets or even insurance or the banking sector goes, the regulators have been really good. They have been proactive. They have been prescribing lots of technical stuff from long time. In fact, we are all equipped to such a manner that even if the network fails completely, we can still run. You know, when half the Bombay power had failed, both the exchanges running very well, especially Bombay Stock Exchange did not have any loss of power at all. Many people don't even know that we operate from our DR site or some other site in during certain live markets. Many people don't know what's happening behind, and all throughout COVID, not a single day we had any instance of anything wrong. Our teams work from wherever they are. The bandwidth is made sure that for the capital markets, the bandwidth is taken care of. We get lots of priorities from the telecom side and the IT people and everyone. So I think digitalization really has helped, as Vijay also rightly pointed out, especially for the insurance and finance sector, because there's no physical product involved. Though I do disagree with him as a consumer of insurance products and other things, or banking, I believe banks and insurance companies and many companies, when they want to transmit something or give something, they are okay with digital stuff. But when they want something, they want copies, whether it is through links or uploaded or whatever. So I am very surprised, but they always do it. For instance, I'll tell you, if you are banking with someone and you've not given any customer initiated transaction for 1 year, like, you know, share market, we have 3 million accounts. So suddenly the bank account becomes dormant and you have to physically visit the branch with some proof of yours, the same PAN card, the same Aadhaar card which you have got issued a few years back. I don't know why they do this. Similarly, when they want Aadhaar card, they are supposed to authenticate. There is a system, digital system, where you get an OTP and that OTP can be used to authenticate. The financial sector, the banking sector, especially in insurance, they want physical number of the Aadhaar or a copy of the Aadhaar, which is legible. I find it very disturbing. Why can't they use an OTP, which is a one-time password, to authenticate me? So wherever it suits the industry, they have really taken up the digitalization. Where it doesn't suit, they don't. Another example I can give you is where the risks are being transferred to the consumer. In a banking sector especially, if I am a consumer and if for some reason, either through social engineering or anything, if my OTP is known or my bank account has been withdrawn, some money has been withdrawn, the banks don't cover that risk. What is the difficulty in the insurance company covering such risks so that people can bank digitally without any worries? Today, many of the people are apprehensive of using digital versions of banking because they wonder if by mistake I give out my OTP, if someone hacks my laptop, what will happen? In fact, so much so, I've got some people saying, I always do banking only from my company's laptop at office or company's desktop. Why? Because they believe that the company is quite secure and the IT department will take care of no one hacking it. I believe we have to go through lots of these things. And as I said, in the rural India or people who work in cash, they work for simple reasons. They say, okay, it saves me hassles. I don't have to remember passwords. If my phone is lost, what happens? The procedures that we have to follow if something goes wrong are hugely bad. And those we have to change. Share markets came up and have developed very well because the procedures are very, very robust. I think the other industries can learn from SEBI and the other regulators or even RBI, and we should do it. Digitalization has helped the economy grow faster. I said it earlier also. Unfortunately, when you want someone to use computers, you have to also teach people how to use computers. We have not done it. Companies like WhatsApp or Facebook have done so extensive work on educating people how to use them, making it so simple, and yet keeping it encrypted end to end. Of course, there have been some problems also, issues that we have seen in the past. Why can't the banking and insurance sector learn from this? I do not know. Why can't we give simple things? Why do you require an app every time? I'm so amazed that people want people to download their app. One bank will say, download my app, it's very robust, it's very good, it's very encrypted. Whereas another bank will say, use my app. How many apps will I have on my phone? How many wallets will I have on my phone? Why can't we have a unified stuff where I just download that, and whichever bank I'm operating from, we should do it. Like for instance, in the mutual fund sector, I don't know whether you guys have talked about it. BSE Star Mutual Fund or BSE Star MF that we talk about has been doing that. We are a financial redistribution house. People trust us, and we have not had a single problem in the BSE Star MF platform, where you can buy any MF from our platform. Similarly, for the insurance sector and other sectors, we should have one software where people don't have to download much. Another thing, like Vijay mentioned, which is good, he thought, for the medical data to be online. In technology, we have one principle, Ravi. And what is that principle? Is if you collect everything together and put it in one bag, then for a hacker or a thief, it is very easy to steal that bag because he has to target only one bag. I don't believe the medical records or private records of any individual should be consolidated in such manner. Why can't we keep the record with the person himself or herself? And whenever the doctor wants, that guy can give that to the doctor the access to it. Not on his computer, on my device. I don't want the data to go out. Like companies don't allow you the data to go out of the domain. Don't you think we should have privacy for individuals, especially for his medical data? Suppose a husband and wife have problems. How difficult it is for wife to just modify his medical data because she will be aware of most of the passwords. But she will not have access to his device once they are having problems. So we have to relook at such things where we are indexing everything to only one number. We should allow diversity of databases. You should allow the ownership of data with someone. In fact, GDPR is a good start. You can see WhatsApp is so scared of GDPR or rather is aware of the GDPR regulations that it didn't implement the new policy in EU area. If we have something like GDPR where even the authorities are considered responsible. I go to US sometimes, and when I go there, I don't mind sharing all my data that they want because the penalties for the government are similar to penalties for individuals for misuse of their data, and the person can get compensated. In fact, some people mistakenly say or rather mischievously say, I hope someone misuses my data in US so I can get compensation so I don't have to work for life. Whereas in India, the data is just taken away. Some person will come to your office or home and say, okay, I want to open a bank account for you and I'll take a live video and all. It's a very good sign digital live video is done. But do you know when you do live video, you are getting data which you should not. There are so many things that are taken over there. Plus, the regulators have been doing well in sandboxes. When we have startups which think of new ideas, the RBI has come up with sandbox. It's a very good sandbox ideas. Startup sector are really doing well. Corona has affected them all. People can't get jobs now. People who really were looking at working in startups, so they might have non-linear profits later on, are now trying to go to the stable job sector where, even if you earn less and it will go only linearly, they want the safety. Because unlike Western world, we really don't have government sponsoring our pensions or old age stuff. In fact, the pensions that we talk of for formal sector workers was just 1,000 rupees per month is the cap. Can you imagine 1,000 rupees per month? What will a person do when he's 60 years or older? The government has to think very, very properly for that. Similarly, medical and education. I believe because of the lack of money, the government has almost abandoned these sectors. World over, the health and education is primarily served, especially for the poor people, by the government stuff. and the policies are not really taken everyone into account. In fact, one of the sayings that I normally do is, I will offer you the same chai that I drink. What I mean is that if the industrialists of this country send their children to certain schools, I would like my children also to go to the certain schools. Whereas what we see in India is, a politician may say, oh, you should study in your mother tongue, but their own children are not studying in the mother tongue. They will all say you should do this. See, it's all good to say that mother tongue. In fact, rich people should go and put their children in government schools and not Kendriya Vidyalayas, by the way. Kendriya Vidyalayas are better than many of the private schools. But we see all ulta over here in India. Otherwise, there is no reason why we could not become a developed economy, or at least go to the upper middle level of the economy. You see the amount of money that we give in government sector. For instance, we are talking of the economic revival. During the COVID times, ASHA, or the health workers that the government calls them as ASHA, accredited social workers, you see the salary levels that they have. We have a law by the government which says about minimum wages. You see the salaries. Manrega, at least you can say, is a subsidy program, so the salary levels are lower than the minimum levels otherwise. But what about people who are used in front line during COVID? They expose themselves completely. And what is the incentive they get? 150 rupees per month if your work is liked by your superior. I think we have to invert all these people who do work well. And remember, I'm not saying merit is the right thing. In fact, 99% of the people who work and work well actually don't worry about merit at all. Merit is required only at the very top level, when you require a good economist or a good administrator or a good minister. But at normal levels, 99% of the work can be done by normal people who have got marks anywhere from 35 to 60% also. And they do it really well because common sense is very good, available in Indians. I believe Indian citizens are very, very well as compared to many of the developed countries, where I've seen people, where do I press the start button and how do I connect? They don't connect. Whereas Indians have taken to digital life like water. I have seen in rural areas, you look at 3-4-year-olds and they can start YouTube and Facebook. The other thing is about banning certain apps. I am sure that we should ban as a retortive measures when some country or some people don't listen to us. I agree. But we also have to have alternatives. Do you know we have banned certain apps of China, but we have not banned Chinese phones. We have not banned Chinese power plants, because if you ban that, we will not be able to work. So it's just tokenism, for them also. App banning doesn't really matter. But what is happening in the process is we have lost people who have been learning on these apps.
Yes.
For instance, I was writing a book on consumer awareness. Indian or Asian consumers are understood by Asians much more than many other people. Some few like Google and WhatsApp, they have understood consumers many places worldwide. But the Chinese companies, they've really hit the hard. You see the subscription, you see the ease of use. I have got people, my students especially, who come up and say, sir, the sharing, mobile data sharing part or other file sharing is much better in any Chinese app as compared to anything. For instance, you see Zoom. You see the ease of use of Zoom versus you see WebEx and Teams and many other things. These are the things that are going to affect India. We have to look at it. We have to make life easier for people who adopt digital. Even the electricity payments. I'll give you an example. In India, Bombay, for instance, I stay in, the BST payments, physically, if you go, there are no charges. When I pay electronically, if I go by paying the bill pay or pay desk or whatever, bill desk, they charge me 5 rupees per bill. So in my society, one of the drivers came and said, sir, in your society, if there are so many people, I will charge you consolidated. Instead of paying 5 rupees, give me 4 rupees, but I'll do it physically for you. And I'll solve your problems in case there is a problem. Imagine a payment facility digitally should actually be lower in charges as compared to physical payments. And here we have this. Similarly, insurance charges. If I pay my insurance bill, I used to pay LIC insurance. I said, if I pay my credit card, they said, oh, I favor only one bank. But any other bank you pay, you have to pay so much money. Even IIMs, my son studies in an IIM. I had to pay his fee. When I paid my credit card, I had to pay transaction charges of 4,000 rupees. Just one transfer of 4,000 rupees. And an IIM, a government entity or government controlled entity, they don't want to do digital. During COVID, then they had to change and they said, okay, we can do an NEFT. But I'm just telling you because wherever they want to make money, they use it, and that is why digital adoption has been little, hesitant with people. Digital is really good. You see Ola, Uber, WhatsApp, Google, Gmail, people have just come in. We should make it as easy, and that's why you see capital markets or mutual funds. You know why investors have increased so much? It's the ease of use of platform. You should use some of those platforms, and I believe the other industries, including insurance, should learn from it. I know how difficult it is for me to renew insurance or get things done. Though Vijayji said that motor claims, you can do it without survey and all. I have not seen. In fact, I had a problem with my AC in the car, and I said, why do you require the car to be put in a workshop before you survey and all? They had me put the car for a few days in the workshop until the surveyor visited. Then he gave a statement saying, okay, we can do this and all. It took a huge amount of time. For 3 weeks, I didn't have the use of the car. Fortunately, I could use another car, so I could do. But imagine a person who has only one car and you get his vehicle in a workshop for 3 weeks. Would he do anything? These are the small things. We've got everything in GST, for instance. But fuel charges are very high. The people have lost faith in GST because it doesn't seem to work. The prices seem to have gone up with GST rather than coming down because for whatever reasons, people are worried about how much they pay. In fact, there is a meme that people have put up saying after paying 30% tax, if you go to a restaurant and you pay 18% tax again, that means approximately 48% or 50% of my salary goes to the government. Similarly, if I invest somewhere, the rate of return that you get depends on the taxes on the same. We have to incentivize, and if we don't incentivize initially and keep it a long-term policy, we are going to have hurdles in digitalization. Corporates have done very well. The encryption levels in corporate have done very, very good. Of course, there are certain issues, like whether if I say good morning to everyone, that should also encrypted or not. But it's like saying if I leave a small hole also, data can leak. But corporates in India have really been safe. Yes, there have been certain issues which people don't normally discuss outside in public, but those issues have been taken care of. In the COVID times, the Digital India has faced some problems, especially as Vijay rightly mentioned, in the networking part. In fact, workers or other office goers who have only one room or two rooms, as we have in Mumbai many times, they are unavailable or they cannot come on a video conference as easily because all the work in the house has to be stopped, all the kids have to be kept quiet. Similarly, education, the school children, they can't get a room where they will be able to connect. And the platforms that they use are also very, very bandwidth heavy. If you see the school platform, the college platform, I think the IT people have to do something. Security does not mean heavy bandwidth. Security does not mean that every word has to be secure. Like suppose you are talking now. What you should secure is the entry into the video conference. But since we are going public, should we have this stream also as secure? I don't know. So these are the small points that I want to make. But digitalization definitely helped the country during COVID. We have done very well. The companies worked. Wherever there was no physical work involved, we have worked. Wherever there is physical work involved, those people have faced the consequences. Many of them have lost their jobs. Many of them don't see the scope that the jobs will come back because MSME has laid off lots of people. We have to let the informal economy get formalized, but not in a rapid manner. Sometimes people think that while I am alive, I will make sure that this thing happens. I think that is where we have to get out. We have to think long term. We have to think, I will start this process. I will increase the pace of growth with the S curve. S curve is the reality in life. You can't have a child and ask him to graduate next year. You have to grow properly. I think we have to go slow. We have to pilot. And the regulators like RBI and SEBI are really doing that. I remember SEBI started their regulation in the 90s. And they took 10-15 years to make sure that all listed company shares now are demat. That is the kind of thing we should do and we will really grow well. Thank you.
Apologies. Sorry. Excellent points, Shankarji, and thanks for highlighting a range of issues and the challenges of going digital. And we have immense opportunities and we have still immense challenges. Thank you, Vijayji, for highlighting so many aspects of IT in insurance and various other positives of the Indian economy, which are very, very important. So, with your permission, we can conclude the session now. I think it has been a very interactive and exciting session, and I have personally learned a lot from this session. So, with this, thanking you all for joining in. Namaskar, Vijay ji, and Namaskar, Shankar ji. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.